Hey, welcome in everybody. Chief Meteorologist Brad Penovich back in the saddle here this evening for live weather impact here on WCNC Plus. Another gloomy day. We had a little bit of a lull yesterday with just drizzle or mist. It's really started to pick up again tonight, and we've got one more surge of moisture we're going to have to get through before we start to dry out for Thursday and especially for Halloween and the weekend. We're going to start with what I think is a pretty good view right now down in Monroe and Union County. This is our Monroe camera on our Mr. Sparky camera network. A couple things you notice here. Visibility is not great. You look off in the distance, you're having trouble seeing. It's definitely wet. And man, look at that fall color. Even in downtown there, they're starting to get some fall color. And that's one thing I noticed around the Charlotte area. We're starting to see some pretty good fall color show up and a lot of leaf drop. The leaves are blowing everywhere right now. So that adds to the slick roads out there. So just give yourself a couple extra car lengths when you're driving today, because the wet roads, the leaves, and the fact that we've got some fog. Visibility in some locations about a mile or less. It's not crazy. I wouldn't call it dense fog, but it's certainly making for a rough evening commute and flying into the airport. Probably a few delays out there. Temperatures haven't moved much. If you love 48 to 53 degrees, that has pretty much been the last 72 hours. We have not budged much on temperature. I think the high today was 53, the low was 48. That has pretty much been the last couple of days. But the rain is back, and like we've seen the last couple of days, the radar doesn't do justice to this. There's definitely some pockets of heavier rain out there, but even in between the pockets of heavier rain, there's drizzle or mist falling. You really can't see it on the radar. The particles are so tiny, and it's also low in the atmosphere that the radar beam either misses it or overshoots it completely. So don't be tricked by the radar and think, there's nothing going on out there. It is certainly raining in all locations, and you can see why. We've got this big spin, a low pressure system spinning counterclockwise back to the west. That's what's pinwheeling all of this moisture into our area, and that's going to continue for a while. In fact, until that low gets past us, we're likely going to see the rain persist into the overnight hours before a little bit of a break. So tonight's forecast looks familiar. 48 again, right? 48, 47. Rain chances are ramping up, probably closer to 80% overnight. Tomorrow, rain chances go down to 20% as the day goes on, because the winds will shift to the west. And the reason it warms up, we scour out that cold air that's trapped against the mountains. We call it cold air damming. It gets pushed out. Plus, we're going to see the sun return. That's something we have not seen since Sunday. So we finally get to see the sun return tomorrow. So just wait. 24 hours from now, you'll enjoy it. Because we want to see the sun as much as possible, because we've got the time change this weekend, and it's going to feel like it's dark even longer than it is. That's coming up on Sunday. So let's go hour by hour. Futurecast shows, like our radar, doesn't do justice to the amount of rain, but it does good on the timing. The rain probably starts to move out around sunrise tomorrow. On the backside, northwest winds pick up, kind of scour out all the low cloud deck, warm us up into the 60s. So I do think a pretty nice Thursday afternoon and evening commute. But then we go into Friday. This is Halloween. Wall-to-wall sunshine, chilly in the morning, and definitely chilly for trick-or-treating, because temperatures will be in the 40s, but the afternoons will be delightful, back into the 60s with lots of sunshine. How much more rain could we see? Most of us have seen anywhere from 1 inch to 3 inches since Monday morning, really Sunday night. But now we're going to pick up an additional maybe quarter to a half an inch for the Piedmont, and for the mountains, maybe up to 1 inch. So for the whole week, most areas are going to be in that 1 to 3.5 inch range. Not going to end the drought, but it's certainly going to help. We need about 6 inches of rain over a 30-day period to officially end the drought. So we only probably got a third or a half of that, depending on where you are. Now, the Halloween weekend, it is a weekend for a lot of folks, because Halloween's on a Friday, so it is kind of stretching out the weekend for some of us. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, mid-60s, those are the highs, with sunshine during the day, but at night, temperatures will be in the 30s and 40s. In particular, Saturday morning could be really crisp and cool. So that's Friday night into Saturday morning. So if you are going to be trick-or-treating or out late Friday night or early Saturday, just be prepared. That could be one of the coldest nights we've seen so far. So bundle the kiddos up, bundle yourself up, because once that sun goes down, which is at 6:30 on Friday evening, it's going to get chilly. Aches and pains forecast. If you get aches and pains when the weather changes, it's usually because of atmospheric pressure. When the pressure is low, especially dramatic drops in pressure, it causes fluid in your joints to expand. And if you have arthritis or an injury, This is why your uncle always says he was a human barometer because of his bad knee or bad hip. It's actually legit sign. So you do see a little bit of that inflammation expand when it's lower. When the pressure goes back up, sometimes people can experience headaches if they get migraines for constricted blood vessels. But for the most part, it's the drop in pressure that causes, or just rapid changes in general. So right now, you're probably feeling some discomfort. That does start to improve as we go into the weekend because we'll see sunny skies and high pressure return. Long-term forecast, starting to see those temperatures warm up a little bit. Now, I should put the big caveat here. Above average now is upper 60s, okay? The average high is around 67, 68. So if you get close to 70, that would be an above normal day. And so in early November, our averages start falling pretty quickly into the 60s. So when you see a 30% chance of above average temperatures, I don't think crazy hot, just think a little bit abnormally warm for this time of the year. The weekend forecast, a lot going on this weekend. Folks will be out and about with the holiday on Friday and the weekend normal activities, but also a word of caution, this is the time change weekend. It's always great when you can set the clocks back 1 hour and get that extra hour of sleep Saturday night into Sunday morning. Technically at 2 a.m. Sunday morning, it goes back to 1 a.m., so it's like time travel. You go back in time a little bit here. But the great thing about this is you get an extra hour of sleep. The bad thing about this, on Sunday night, the sun is going to set at around 5:30. So it is going to get dark super early on Sunday. And most folks don't notice it Sunday. They notice it Monday when they go back to work because they're like, what the heck? It's dark out when I'm already, at work still. Here's a look at your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. Again, temperatures pretty moderate. In the mid 60s, morning lows in the 40s. We'll set the clock back Saturday night, Sunday morning. Could see a few showers Monday, Tuesday. Right now, it looks like more of a Tuesday event than a Monday event, especially the later we get in the day. We'll show you the 10-day forecast and kind of show you pretty good consistency here. Not a hard forecast when every day is about the same temperature. The only change is the rain chances sprinkled in there Monday, Tuesday, and possibly going into next Saturday. That's when we'll see the rain chance. But a good long look there shows you that's pretty good weather for this time of year, and at least we're going to get a couple more chances of rain. Real quickly, I did want to give you an update on Melissa because Tim and I will be talking about this. This is where Melissa is right now. That is in the central and southern Bahamas. The storm is moving now, and I should say moving. It is hauling. Winds are currently 90 miles per hour, but I do think there could be an uptick here as you're seeing a bit of a flare there in the satellite imagery. But look at the movement. Northeast at 16 miles per hour, so it is flying. We'll talk about that track, some of the impacts it has had in the Caribbean, some of the historic numbers that it has had as well, coming up with Tim Buckley. He's going to join me coming up here after the break. We'll talk about that, the rainy, cool weather, which is finally going to break, the Halloween forecast going into the weekend, and we'll probably hint at a little bit of the drought monitor update, which comes out tomorrow. I don't think it's going to end, but I think we have a little suspicion on where it's going to go. That's all coming up right after the break, so stick around. All right, welcome back to Live Weather Impact. Tim Buckley joins me as always from WFMY up in Greensboro. Tim, another dreary day. It feels like we're stuck in a little bit of a rut, but I think the good thing is we need the rain, and we also can see a light at the end of the tunnel finally.
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago that we were talking about badly needing rain, couldn't buy a drop. We still need some more, by the way, but it's been a long duration. So sometimes you get a lot of rain in a short period of time. Sometimes you get just a little bit over a long period of time, and that's kind of how I felt about this week. We're still only in like 1.5 to 2 inches, but it's happened over the period of 3 days so far.
Yeah, it is definitely one of those patterns where you feel like it's rained the entire time. It really hasn't. And when you look at the totals, you're like, we should have had more rain than this by now, right? And it's been like a death by 1,000 drizzle drops. It's just been just drizzle and mist for 3 days, and not really the big downpours that give you a ton of rain. So it's been wet the entire time, but it just hasn't amounted to a whole bunch.
Yeah, and it's like we said back on Monday, it's the classic cold air damming. It's that cool air stuck in place. It's when your weather app is kind of useless for tracking the radar on a day like today. It's been misting here all afternoon and all morning, too. And the radar mostly, until recently, had been clear. But I actually think we could get a couple downpours that develop overnight tonight. And I wonder your thoughts. We might even see a little elevated thunder every now and again. That wouldn't totally shock me.
Yeah, what's really interesting, I did see the upper level low coming through parts of Tennessee and northern Alabama did produce, it looked like either graupel or soft hail with some of those elevated.
Okay.
And the temperatures were in the 50s, so the freezing level's really low under there. And so I would be surprised to see some of that show up, especially in the mountains as it crosses over us. But we'll see if we get a rumble of thunder out of that, because you can get elevated thunderstorms in this setup. And one of the things that does as well, Tim, is we're noticing the visibility is really bad this evening. A lot of fog is formed. And that's because we're getting that warm air above our heads trying to squash the cold pool at the surface. And when that happens, it literally lowers the cloud deck pretty close to the ground. Usually right before the wedge breaks, you get a big area of dense fog that forms. And that seems to be what's happening tonight.
Oh, for sure. And I was mentioning in our forecast, too, that, for us, we've been stuck around 50 all week for the temperature. We'll probably see the temperatures climb a little bit overnight tonight, at least by just a degree or two. And typically, we would call that warm air advection or something. But when you have that warmer air pushing in, a little bit more moisture moving into, it's a perfect recipe for fog. And so I think the morning commute for both our areas, probably not that wet, but you could still have some of that fog lingering around, and that's something to consider.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about the fact that, we still need more rain, because one of the first questions I had today from a bunch of viewers online were, how are we doing with the drought? And the drought monitor comes out tomorrow. The data only runs Tuesday to Tuesday, so it would only include parts of Monday and Tuesday's rain. So, but we know, both of us, that it wasn't enough, but it probably put a little dent in it. And so one of my favorite graphics, and I don't know if Jeb can bring up my laptop real quickly, I went and looked, so I pulled up the climate conditions. We call this the amount of precipitation needed to end the drought. And for the climate zones, most of them are in anywhere from 4 to 7 inches of rain. You guys are kind of on that 4-inch area, and that's over a month. So depending on how much rain you had, there wasn't enough to eliminate the drought, but probably take a third or a half out, I would think, for some of these areas. So I'll be curious to see what the drought monitor does tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised to see some improvement, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see it not change that much.
Well, and you mentioned too, so like yesterday's rainfall, today's rainfall, not included completely. So it will be a partial snapshot. We'll get some more decent rain overnight tonight, but no one's going to eliminate the drought here, but it kind of stops the bleeding at least a little bit.
Yes.
And I think that, any of the farmers that we might have talked to or anybody concerned about these things, I think they'll appreciate just the pattern change and the overall, or we talked about a lot of fire danger too. We haven't talked about that once this week with good reason, because that's something that's going to be a concern when you get into those drier stretches. And then farther down the line, it looks like we'll have a shot maybe at some more rain next Monday or Tuesday, one of those days. And so just getting some regularity to it would be really helpful.
Yeah, I know everybody who overseeded and aerated their lawns is pretty happy now because this was like the perfect kind of rain to help that out. I've noticed a lot of the lawns beginning to green up as well. And that's one thing, the cool temperatures. If you have a cool season variety of grass like fescue, this is like great grass growing weather. It really does do pretty well in this setup. So the good news, Tim, on this too, as I mentioned, the light at the end of the tunnel, I mean, tomorrow we actually could see the sun return. And for Halloween, we're looking at sunny skies as well. So this is, in some ways, I know it's been a miserable 3 days, but this has been the perfect rain falling in the beginning, middle of the week, and then by a holiday and the weekend, it looks like everybody sees some rapid improvement.
Yeah, really. I mean, it really should improve quite a bit. One of the things I think will be interesting to see tomorrow, and then a little bit for Halloween as well. Consider there's going to be some breeziness to this.
Yes.
Kind of classic fall weather setup. When you get the clearing out, you're going to have this upper level low still overhead of us, and when that wind comes down the mountain, we could still see some gusts around 25, maybe 30 miles per hour at times. That would go for tomorrow, and probably into Halloween a little bit too. So plan on it being dry, but we could get blown around a little bit. The decorations could be doing a dance a little bit as well, I would guess, into Friday. But there'll be a chill to the air, so it'll be festive. I don't know about trick-or-treating, what your costumes look like, but you might want to bundle or have a top layer at least, depending on how hardy you are.
I know one thing I've noticed, and I mentioned this in our local forecast, there's a lot of leaves coming down already. It feels like the leaves in the Piedmont have changed really dramatically. And I don't know if they're changing or they're just dropping, but there's been a lot more leaves showing up, at least on the roads and parking lots and in my yard. It seems like that leaf drop has happened pretty quickly this week, Tim.
I think so too, and we've been talking so much about rain. I haven't really thought about the fall color all that much, but I actually think this might be the best weekend up in our area, in the foothills, the Piedmont. If you still want to go and check out some sites, this is the latest estimation from Explore Fall, but usually these things are always a couple days delayed just because of observations. But if you were trying to go to Hanging Rock, for example, Pilot Mountain, Stone Mountain, don't delay. I mean, get out there when you can. Probably Saturday and Sunday would be beautiful, or even just checking out places around, the Linville Gorge, Hickory, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, any of the local spots. Good timing this weekend to have some sunshine. Just get out there because it's not going to last that much longer, especially when we have these colder mornings. And we've been cold pretty much all week, so I think that's really accelerating the change. And with the breeze that's happening and coming our way the next 2 days, that should take even more leaves off as well.
Yeah, I plan to get the drone up this weekend because I've seen some good color just driving into Charlotte the last couple days, and I'm going to try to get some visuals because, like you said, I think the wind is going to be our biggest detriment because it's probably going to start taking these leaves off pretty quickly, and it will be a breezy couple of days. And we've seen some pretty gusty winds all week as well with the wedge. Now they shift around to the west northwest. So yeah, I think that's a good call. The next couple of weekends, this weekend and next weekend, might be peak color for the northwest Piedmont, the foothills, and then the next part, I think the next great color location is going to be Uwharrie and going towards central North Carolina, Morrow Mountain, those areas. They tend to be later, and that's why it's so great around here. You still got areas you can go to as we go into November. But yeah, typically once you get to about Thanksgiving, everything's done. It's like there's not much left.
Yeah.
So November's the Piedmont season. So speaking of the wind, we still got to talk about Melissa. Just crazy to watch the satellite loop even this evening, Tim. I watched last night and almost shocked as the eye was trying to reform, and it did as it was going into Cuba. You wake up this morning, it looks disheveled. Now I'm looking at it and I'm seeing the cloud tops getting cold again as it's over the southern Bahamas. Melissa just does not want to weaken that much. It's crazy to see these upticks as it gets back over water.
It really has staying power, and it'll be interesting to see the data as it comes in tonight over the last couple of hours. It kind of okay, we finally got down to 90 mile per hour for the winds. We're finally up to 970 for the pressure, but the forecast calls for more strengthening. I mean, it has it going back to Category 2 status, and pretty quickly as well. So it's getting ventilated pretty well. It's accelerating a little bit. But it's not really dying off much at all. And the Bahamas, They're land in an academic sense, but it's mostly warm water, and you've got some sandbars there, and people live there, but it's not like Cuba. It's not like Jamaica. There are no big, tall mountains.
Yeah.
There's not much resistance to put up for a hurricane. So essentially, it's able to strengthen or at least maintain its intensity right now pretty easily, it seems like.
Yeah, I saw the last recon that was in there. It did show a 1 millibar pressure drop between two of the passes. So, at the very least, it's maintaining itself. But as you mentioned, the water's warm. It's not dry air, and even though there's some wind shear, Tim, the wind shear is from the southwest, which is the direction it's moving. And sometimes when it moves with the shear, that helps ventilate the system, and so it doesn't really have a negative impact on it. I think it's going to take a while for it to weaken as it gets north towards colder water and drier air. But what's interesting is I've been looking at some of the long range of this storm. It kind of goes extratropical, and when you look at the future cast of our wind gusts, this thing becomes a massive gale center or nor'easter, or I don't know what you want to call as it moves into the North Atlantic and the Canadian Maritimes. But that is going to be one big wind producer. And my friend Eddie Shearer, who lives up in Newfoundland, he's a meteorologist up there, he's been talking a lot about this could be a pretty big windstorm from there up in that area near St. John's.
That's a really good call. And, to me, it seems like they just can't catch a break the last couple of years. They've really gotten clipped. Bermuda and Newfoundland, like these two areas, they've gotten clipped by a lot of these storms pretty frequently. And so last week when we were talking about the long-term path of Melissa, the intrigue was, okay, is it going to get caught up in that upper level low that we have overhead right now? And it didn't get caught up. It's not going to get caught up enough to impact the United States. But like you're just showing here, the closed circle on the left, that's the upper low, and then the closed circle on the right, that's what's left of Melissa. And so it really still is interacting one with the other, and it could be in a bad way for Canada.
Yeah, I had another meteorologist I follow. He made the correlation to Sandy. Is this not happening over the United States, but maybe happening over the Canadian Maritimes, of having a tropical system and a cold core system kind of merge and create this big windstorm. So it's certainly something to watch. I think the impacts aren't over, and not that it's the same type of storm that happened in Alaska, but you think about that Alaskan typhoon. It was a remnant typhoon that became extratropical and did all that damage and surge in Alaska. Not that I'm forecasting that for Canada, but there could be a similar type of meteorological setup here where you're going to have a pretty good low pressure system that could have the impacts of a tropical system without technically being a tropical system.
And especially this time of year when we're getting cold, we have huge differences in air mass and temperature and everything like that. You take these hurricanes, which were so compact, and Melissa was extremely compact. I mean, Jamaica's not that big of an island, but I mean, the core of it only filled up basically half of it. Kingston never got much above a 50-mile-per-hour gust with the whole storm. So this was a small but mighty storm, one of the mightiest. Now it's expanding, and it still has all that energy to use, and it's just going to get wider and wider with the wind field like you showed. And I think that's a big concern for, shipping channels, but also just anybody that lives up there in Canada. And Bermuda probably takes a pretty nasty hit from this thing also, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up Jamaica because we're finally starting to see some of the images come out, Tim, but boy, there is so much fake stuff out there. It's infuriating as a meteorologist to see the bunch of AI stuff. You mentioned Kingston. I had to laugh last night. I mean, it wasn't funny, but it was. Someone posted damage from Kingston with 140-mile-per-hour winds, and I was like you. I'm like, Kingston, the highest gust at the airport was 59 miles per hour. I mean, they got very lucky. I could see flooding over in that area or in the mountains of eastern Jamaica, but they got very lucky. And then this morning, we finally get legitimate video from the Prime Minister of the western part. And I don't know if you've seen those aerials of that. It looks like tornado damage, Tim. And it really goes to show you how strong those winds were in that eye wall.
Just horrible. And the government, it seems like they've been the ones to follow here. If you're trying to figure out what's been going on there, the Prime Minister is doing a great job. I don't know the right term, but the Transportation Minister has been providing great updates on the airports. They've already got the Kingston Airport open for relief missions again, which is cool. And also the Montego Bay Airport, which looked yesterday to be badly damaged. They're saying, well, hold on, we're going to be able to get flights in and out of there more quickly than you think. So those are good updates, but the bad updates are when you obviously see those aerials deals, and it is just totally, taking all the trees off. Every roof that wasn't basically a concrete roof seems to have come off in the eye wall areas, and very localized, but just terrible stuff.
That's what I noticed from the aerials. There was a lot of damage, but like even the sturdy structured homes, the concrete ones, that's what I was worried about. The walls were up, but the roofs got completely ripped off, so it exposed them. Which it looks horrible, Tim, but it also tells me at least there was places for people to shelter, and it wasn't probably fun when you're getting wet or to get wind and stuff blowing on you, but at least there was a safe place for people to ride this out, even though the roof got blown off, because those are survivable structures. You could survive in those structures in those winds.
Yeah, and you had that great map last week of the how many of the structures were considered good or not in different parts of the country. I do think it's not that recent, but having Gilbert as a a benchmark storm within people's lifetimes, hopefully that really upped the building standard. People say that it did. Our custodian here at the station, he's from Jamaica. I was talking to him about it the other day, and he said everything's been built differently since Gilbert, and some people can afford this or others can afford that, but either way, at least with a storm like this, you want to be in some place that has a concrete wall, and so people know that, and hopefully that was something that was taken into account. Still, communication seems tough. We haven't heard from people like Cyclone. He's been down there. I don't think we've heard from him yet, but I imagine we'll start to get more and more coming out more quickly, hopefully in the next couple of days.
Yeah, and I think that's the other reason why to watch what you see online, follow the government, because probably the people that saw the worst stuff have not been able to communicate with us yet. So probably a good idea to wait. They're going to hopefully get Starlinks. I know Starlink, like they did here in North Carolina, they're giving away free service as long as there is a device. So I'm sure those will start to pop up. Some of the resorts I know in Montego Bay have been posting from their Starlink. So that's something to keep in mind. And real quick, Tim, we're almost out of time here. A couple of the records, obviously this is all preliminary. We know this is probably going to be the third strongest from a pressure standpoint, and it's going to be the second, tied for the second for the strongest winds. And then you've got this other weird record, which is kind of floating around, this drop sound data of like 247 mile per hour winds in one of the drop sounds that has to be approved. This is going to go down as one of the strongest storms we've ever seen.
And considering the landfall intensity ties with Labor Day for the biggest in Atlantic history, too.
So, just a lot of records. So thanks, everybody. Stick around. We've still got more news coming ahead. And trust me, we will see the sun by tomorrow.